Great, lovely. So I picked out about 10 poems tonight. I write across a range of different sort of themes and subjects and things like that. Most of the poems tonight are sort of person, relationship based, but one or two other ones sort of thrown in. So the one I'm going to kick off with, back in 2011, there was a big earthquake caused a tsunami that wreaked havoc all the way along the east coast of Japan. You remember seeing the sort of scenes of it sweeping in on our television screens. And so I wrote this sort of poem about that sort of event, and it's called the Otsuchi City Administrator. His breath fogs in the early morning haze. A substantial man, balding, pinstripe suit. He bikes past the boxed lunch factory. Mute swans, riverland, a pair of waifs and strays. He likes to identify wild flowers along his way, to know up close the world on his doorstep. The night shift leaves unfurled a blue sky, built for mid-afternoon hours. A 7-story wall of water comes at him, black, vast, incongruous, and he sees land boil rougher than the sea's anger, subordinates wide swept away, tossed homes, hurled cars, crushed skulls, and bodies in a tree. Next day, he waits for the first helicopter. His heart is a hewn-out room. Nothing schools us in who we are, in husband, in wife, like ceremonies of bliss and grief. Life found where shoes were lasted, death in pools where pottery was fired. Then tears and words exchanged, vague prayers, bone counting, shroud sorting in shadow, in light. He's always finding bent spoons, 5-sided bowls, but not songbirds. The ornamental cherry by his door brings Buddhist practice to being gracious, heal his faith. He begins small, anyhow, noting daily things to be thankful for. He worries this is sanctimonious, and maybe it is, but it helps for now. So, a few years ago I was doing a little bit of clearing up and moving things around, and came across the following, the passport. Like a letter that's been lost for 2 decades, my mother arrived unexpectedly from the back of my father's Victorian mahogany roll-top desk when I moved it. Dressed in navy blue and gilt, neck embossed, face grey, clean-edged, eyes so full of watery shine that I caught my breath, and the loud grey ticking of the Vienna clock. And this next one is called Cafe Clatch, which I think is a sort of new neologism based on a sort of compounding of 2 German words, and it means sort of gossip over coffee. So we all tend to sort of enjoy a bit of gossip in the coffee shop. 1 or 2 rather sort of obscure words, and I might just mention a flatus poetic inspiration. An oronym is like a pair of words that sound the same but are spelt differently and mean different things, like ice cream and ice cream. And although I sort of wrote it for primarily visually, I think it still sort of comes across sort of orally. Anyway, Cafe Clatch. These days nobody knows whether the sea is male or female, but Amy maintained, in an ideology-beauteous argument on cougar hunting through the art of Baroque embroidery, that oceans were neither and so neuter, which Elziard thought was logic laid on like paint in impasto, and he chutzpah cavilled Gora for a lack of salt in her fresh air and fried snowball soup. A recipe so truly egregious that Ose recalled pissing in a lift, and Gora got Elziard back by saying self-strangulation was the only pure suicide, and so his afflatus must have died of autopoetic asphyxiation, of which Amy, looking jealous, overbitery, put down to wishful drinking and birdsong on the seabed. But Jose, not to be outdone, complimented Amy on her borderline tacky for business dress, bottom burped, then pecker fretted about the ins and outs of nymphomantion, so much that Gora called him a swagger-styled man of independent means, and Amy said that he was the spitting image of the octoroon actor playing the lead on Stuff He Knows in London's West End, or in Elziard's words, more like the barman at the Stuff He Knows, both being an entry in any foreign monomasticon, which is why I think that night we were all on the wrong side of the sky. Yeah, we have one to in, I think, the start of February 1971, Apollo 14 went to the moon, and the chap who was the command module pilot, Stuart Rooser, took with him a whole load of tree seeds. And when they returned, the seeds germinated, and they've been planted all around the world, and they're called moon trees. So that's the context for this one, called Moon Tree. He has a secret. Not a terrible secret in his opinion, but one that would ruin his anonymity if it ever came out. He leans low above a whitewashed wall. Leaf drips of night-cooled water pool where lightning blasted once, and yet he still nocturnally stretches to touch the radiant bottom of the risen moon. Even after all these years, he will not let on, will not disclose his pedigree. A sycamore aboard a son of Zeus, mixing it with loblolly pine, redwood, American sweet gum and Douglas fir, one of Stuart Rooser's 500. Quite often I'd like to sort of go to exhibitions, and sometimes a picture or an installation or something like that will sort of catch my eye and oh, yeah, I rather like that, and form the sort of inspiration for a poem. And middle of last year I went, and there was a video installation playing in this exhibition, and it was a silent video just looking around a triangular building. It was entitled Isosceles, and for 5 minutes it just sort of slowly went around this three-sided one-storey building and just continued on a loop. And I was sort of quite curious as to where this building was, and I managed to see that there was a sort of office address on one of the buildings, and I looked it up, did a little bit of research, and turned it into a sort of triptych poem. 1. Former engine house. He haunts West Poultry Avenue. Here, one story of red brick and Portland stone over domes, railway sidings, cranes and lifts. Trains disgorge carcasses into market and cold store, their funnels smoke thick up to black vortices of warm air. 2. Derelict toilet block. Talk me through what you do now. 3 chimneys, no steam to vent, doors boarded, windows bricked, roof taken to growing wild flowers. A sign by West Smithfield Street's underworld entrance, gentlemen. As motorbikes line abreast, doze and taxis rank, an absence presence move you, like a shadow dart. Who knows it's been torn from me, but everything vanishes in the end, a fiction of the eye, too small to see. 3. Future retail unit. I sieve facts from an avalanche of Daily Mail style indignation. A refurbished ground floor with plant space above. Cheap goods and services that austerity-bitten Britain has come to rely on. City traders war-whooping on Smithfield Street. And something seen in the dazzle of the sun. fire exit from Narnia. This next one is sort of set in little times at Bocca di Vale. Times at Bocca di Vale. Our travelling began here, in this trattoria, under the trees. You shy but sure reciting Lorca, me trying Dante, La Vita Nuova. You eating angel nuts, me burying your saffron dress and deep in sand by the lake. Our travelling held fast here. Vargas fingered his rich strings that moaned in midnight hours. Answers came mid-course. You wave-layered your hair, ribbon-tied my chaos, pointing out overhead an archipelago of stars. Our travelling unravelled here, so quietly, in an evening's hubbub. My sad, not quite mustard trousers, your t-shirt and your mood that matched the blue head of a green frescoed African parrot. We listened in to each other's pain. Our travelling ends here. I press a finger to your lips to hush us, to close the distance of memory's fictions together. We drink coffee, talk for an hour in hollow calm. Then comes silence. I know how the empty planter feels. You ask why everything can't end this way, in a rhythm of a chord so astoundingly physical it's solid as a seam that's been sewn shut. I sigh. We choose to live or die a little each day, but your heart has set sail for the eternal tonight. This is a short little poem that went into Magma. Donald. He was thin and wiry, a cyclist I seem to recall. Although small, he was malleable and versatile, could unclog a drain, pick a lock, demonstrate how to clean the shaft of a mechanical pencil. He even managed to temporarily fix a bra strap. I wonder why, after you've opened a paperclip, you can't bend it back so it looks normal again. Another exhibition that I went to, there was a sort of collection of sort of glass jars containing sort of porcelain type, tiny porcelain sort of artifacts, and it was sort of premised on a sort of museum of the future where all the bees had died and there was no sort of fauna and flora and so on, and he was sort of looking at museum artifacts, and I quite liked that, and wrote the following poem. It's called Specimen Jar. The sun's up behind the hills, its flower wind ruffling the yarn-bombed beach, where a cocker spaniel's owner, small-breasted and heavy-hipped, has a near miss with a spiky-haired Persian cat. Fingers crossed for a non-rainy day, a cigar-shaped man, blue umbrella in hand, strides across an almost empty square. Down at the museum, there's a pitter-patter on the skyline, the sound of a car receding over cobbles and collection display cases. A woman with non-slip shoulders emerges out of a back room past pictures of post-apocalyptic wilderness. As if I give a monkey's fuck about, and now I'm haunted by broken voices, sweeter than sour apples and a pelt of bees. All bees have died. A little laugh lodges in the throat, half exits through a wall. On a shelf, in a jar, under a ground glass stopper, something's coarse-meshed and careless. I blench as if bee stung on the lips from the here-ness and now-ness of a tragedy always just around the corner. And no, oblique strategies will not work. Like an entomologist looking at anatomy, I examine the paper-thin porcelain inside. A dull cyst, hand-lettered, no bees. A figure 40, bees' lifespan in days. A pierced work, simply edged cream and tendered flesh of amber embryo, but no bees, no pollen, no flowers. It is akin to a suspension of distaste, or iridescent with suspense. I'm on the verge of hearing constant bee thrum. So, the penultimate poem I've got tonight, I quite enjoy the work of M.C. Escher, and one of his pieces was done in 1948. It's a lithograph called Drawing Hands. Two hands sort of emerging out of the plane of the paper, just gently sketching the other. And so that was what inspired this Drawing Hands. His work is long, slow, like the time-serving of felons, offering reasons for speaking on what's important and essential in art. Somewhere a syzygy of hands is smart, but casually coming alive, their free-spiritedness poking through a poetry of silence, as thickets of river oaks hung in a haze of smoke. Yet it provokes a visual conflict, an illusion, the shock of objects emerging from plain form, mysteriously to share our light and melancholy. My prints, black and white, but read with all kinds of quasi-meanings, like overheard thoughts tinged by feelings. And the last poem I've got tonight, I'll leave you on a sort of on a light note. It came out of a particular writing workshop that I went to, and often at such workshops, you get feedback from pieces that you've created, and you always hope to get constructive criticism. So this is called constructive criticism. She said she didn't think it was a poem. I said nothing. She said, could I tell her what I thought made it a poem? I said I didn't know, but I did. She said it sounded like a conversation. I said it was meant to. She said maybe it would work on radio, though she wasn't sure. I said, I'll think about that. I think tomorrow I'll write another non-poem.